panel discussion by people who didn't allow our social consumerist construct to force them into these little boxes. And through the wonderful books they've helped create, they're engaging us as well to wake up and find courage to leave our little boxes. Who were here for the Makdi Mausi session earlier today? So if I was to give Makdi Mausi a name today, right now, that name would either be Bijal Vachharajani, or Seema Mundoli, or Radha Rangarajan, or Shalini Srinivasan. The session's called Authors in the Hot Seat, and it'll be moderated by Shalini Srinivasan. In the Anthropocene, how do stories about the climate crisis fire up young environmentalists? Who are India's hottest climate heroes? For those who think it's too late, it's too little late, how do authors inspire hope and optimism and return to the reader their sense of self-efficacy? When Bijal Vachharajani is not reading a children's book, she's writing or editing one. She has authored multiple planet-friendly books, including Savi and the Memory Keeper, A Cloud Called Bhura, as well as That Night. Bijal is a certified climate warrior. Seema Mundoli is a faculty at Azim Premji University. Her research focuses on the role of nature in Indian cities in addressing the challenges of environmental sustainability and social justice. Her recent co-authored books with Harini Nagendra include Cities and Canopies, Trees in Indian Cities by Penguin India, and the children's books So Many Leaves by Pratham Books, and Where Have All Our, this is Gundathops Gone, by Azim Premji University. We have Radha Rangarajan. Radha is usually found lost in either a forest or a book. Good job, Radha. She dabbles in filmmaking, art and writing. A photographer, Radha prefers to hide behind the camera and let her pictures tell many stories about the natural world. She posts as Radha Rangarajan on Instagram. And our moderator for the session is Shalini Srinivasan. Shalini writes comics, picture books and novels. Her books include Vanmala and the Cephalopod, Gangamma's Gharial, Shoe Cat, Thu Cat, and The Case of the Missing Water. Shalini teaches English and writing at Azim Premji University, Bangalore, and consequently spends a lot of time speechifying at captive students. Thank you. Once again, please welcome everybody.
Hi, you guys. Thank you, audience, and thank you for being here. I thought we'd start off gently. So I wanted to ask you guys, why do you write about the environment, right? The world is going to hell, everything is terrible. Why do you want to write about the environment?
So this is a good question. I really don't know why I write if I have to summarize it in one line, but just an anecdote. So somebody once sent me a photograph. This happens to me a lot. People on social media keep taking pictures of things they see, and they send me photos saying, what is this, what is that? So somebody sent me a photograph of caterpillars and asked me what they were. And I said, they're caterpillars of so-and-so butterfly, and that's why it's on so-and-so plant, because that's the larval host, and the adult will look like this. And then she was completely shocked that the caterpillar would turn into something else. So this was an adult, probably my age, and something very basic we learn in school is the butterfly life cycle, right? But by the time we grow up, and she probably was, I don't know, maybe she was an engineer, architect, CA, I don't know what she was, but she had forgotten that a caterpillar becomes something else. And she said, oh, I just thought caterpillars stay caterpillars all their lives. And I felt, where is this disconnect coming from? So whenever I think, oh, why do I write about all this? I think there are people who might find something out of all these books. I think we must write.
So I would say that 5 years ago I had turned into the world's biggest cynic. After working in environment and conservation, I used to wake up every morning thinking, this is it, doomsday, nothing we can do. But then I started teaching, and I realized that if I have to teach undergraduate students and postgraduate students, I can't go there and be a cynic and say, look guys, your education is no use, the world is going to end. So I was forced, in one sense forced, but also it was also the same time that I began to discover Bangalore. And I found that there were a lot of people here actually who were meaningfully doing things to protect the city. It could be the lake activists, it could be those people who turn up early in the morning to protest against a tree felling. And to me, these were all people who were, they're everyday people, but for me they were everyday heroes who just came even though they didn't know whether their turning up would be any use. And so that gave me a lot of hope to start writing hopefully about the environment. And I think that finally it will be us who write and us who read and us who fight for the environment that will save the planet, so to say.
I just want to say that I think Seema should write a book about cats, which should be a compilation of her Twitter feed as well, because that will make the planet very happy.
It'll make me also very happy, I think.
Right? I have one reason literally why I write, and it's because I've spent a lot of my adult life meeting children who are pretty awesome. They are the ones who have come together to build a junior tiger task force when India's tigers were really, really under threat. They're the ones who stood outside Jahangir Art Gallery and made their parents pay for chores so they can raise money for tiger conservation. They're the ones who made the schools a plastic-free zone. And every time I meet these children, I'm just like, you're pretty awesome. And you need stories that kind of, you should have stories that fuel your imagination. And because they are imaginative, they care. And I think that caring, which we adults tend to forget, needs to be nurtured. And I think books is a great way of doing that, and which is really why I write. It's because most of the children I've met are pretty awesome, and I'm just like, here, book for you.
I thank you for bringing up the caring, because I think that's something you all put in a lot into your work. So how do you do that? How do you write your story so that that caring takes the center of it, right? For instance, I'm thinking of your book on climate heroes. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, the climate book, I think, was actually, it's just very simple. Again, when we meet children, a lot of them tell us that they love biographies. And that was quite a surprise for me because I don't. I've never really liked reading biographies. And children often will have questions about these adult figures and all of that. And when Shayoni Basu of Duckbill, Shayoni, Anushka and Ayushi actually asked us to write this book, they said, will you put down 10 people? And Radha's like, 10's not happening. No, you can't distill a whole of India of the kind of conservation and climate movement that's happening into 10. So it took a lot of whittling down discussion to come up with 10 contemporary people doing work. And it was just amazing because almost every one of them came up with this, told us this story, and we realized that it all started during the childhood. Ram was rescuing snakes at that time. Parinita Dandekar was calling up the water board and asking all sorts of questions about some rivers near her house. And that's when it all started, really. And so I think it was just, let's tell the story as honestly as possible. And when you do that, it's just so powerful being able to talk about how Rohan Chakravarti uses artwork to talk about conservation, or how Vidya Atreya works with leopards and to talk about animal-human conflict, or where it's not existent and why is it not. And just children have these questions which make you constantly realize, you've got it. I had a session yesterday morning, and this is something I try all the time, and I encourage you to do it. You ask a child what they want to do about the climate crisis, and literally all of them like, I'll take action. We're not going to use plastic. We're not going to pollute. I'm going to walk to school. Adults, we'll leave maybe. That's pretty much it. And I think that's the kind of stories we tell. That's it.
Yeah, so Bijal pretty much said it, yeah. So another thing was, coming back to the book Bijal was talking about, the one we co-wrote. And almost all of the people we met and spoke to would always go back and say, but you must write about the other person, not me, because I drew so much inspiration from them. They've been taking care of this and they've been doing that for so many years. And it's just such a wonderful community where it's a single focus, right? They all want to do that one thing, and they've been doing it for that many years. So it is just, I think, inspiring to write these stories. Yeah.
Seema, I know you meet a lot of inspiring climate activists in your academic work and in your fiction. So who have you met recently who's particularly inspiring?
I think, like I said before, everybody who wakes up in the morning, comes for the protest that we call out for help for. For me, it's the everyday people actually who are for us the heroes. And children, like the students, like Bijal was saying about children, like the students that we teach, maybe a particular day I may have a very depressing class, it'd be like on pollution, and I'm showing them only pictures about waste and what we are doing to the water bodies. But then they'll come up with a story to say how they know of a river or a pond in their grandmother's place where they have swum, where they have enjoyed themselves. And so I don't want to put a hero figure, but all these people who enjoy nature, who connect with nature, who want to protect it, who turn up when it's needed the most for environment, for me, they are the heroes that I look up to. Because I don't end up going for every protest, but some people go for every single one in the city. So.
Thanks. I was also wondering a little bit, and this is for all of you, because this was a conversation Seema and I were having earlier, where we were talking about how when we were growing up, our experiences with nature were in some ways very different from the kinds of experiences our students, our readers get, right? I think we had a lot more freedom to just wander around in wild places. So I was sort of wondering how you guys feel about this.
It's a bit mixed, really, because, for example, all the students I've been interacting with here, right? This morning I did a session on nature journaling, and I found out that they're actually going on outings and doing nature journaling already. But as a child, I didn't have any such exposure at all. For me, it was that tree with yellow flowers that comes in Jan, and then somewhere in August it's all gone. And the tree with the red flowers that comes only in summer, but much later I found out it's a gulmohar. So it was very, it wasn't that specific, the knowledge or the education I received for those things. So in that sense, I'm kind of jealous about what these kids are getting to do at such a young age. And I'm also really happy because I think being so tuned into these small details at such a young age is just so precious. They won't realize it now. They may not even realize it as adults, but I think there are some people like me who will realize and acknowledge that, this is great that you're getting to do this. And I was told that they go out for nature walks around Agra Lake and things like that. I'm so happy for them. I'm also very jealous. I didn't get to do any of that.
For me, definitely, I do feel bad for many of the children today, because the kind of childhood that I had growing up in a university campus where, and my parents were very strict. By 4 o'clock, whatever homework is done is done. After that, you're not doing homework. 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you're going to go out and play. 8 o'clock, come back to just show that you're alive, have dinner, and then the cycle repeats 365 days a year. But those 4 hours that we spent every single day was climbing trees, running around trees, catching dragonflies, cruel as it may sound, and summer holidays back at home, learning how to swim with keelbacks. So I think I had a absolutely miraculous and wonderful childhood. And I really feel bad that a lot of students today children who live in cities don't get that. This morning session, when we asked in the master class, how many of y'all were born in cities? Almost 90% of the people in the audience said that they had been born in cities. And all the children had been born in a city. So they had absolutely nature has to be felt. It has to be experienced. It's very sensory. So I did feel bad that they won't have those same experiences that I had. So making memories with nature is very, very critical, I feel, as you grow older. Yeah, for me that was important.
I must admit, I'm very scared. And I'm a pessimist, a cynic, all of that. But while I was researching Savi and the Memory Keeper, one of the things that kept coming back to through my research was just how much we are forgetting, just how powerful nature is and how big a role it plays in our lives. And every time I'll do a school assembly, especially Earth Day, I'm constantly being called, come to school assembly because Earth Day, we must celebrate it. And everyone's pledging. You know, there's a lot of pledges. We won't do this, we'll stop using plastic, all of that. And you know, at some level, my heart just sinks because I'm like, yes, it's important to do all of that. But what's really important is to love nature, as you said, to feel it. And we've stopped doing that as young people and even as adults currently. And if you don't do that, if you don't have that engagement with nature, if you've not climbed a tree, you don't want to protect the tree, it can be chopped down, go, it's fine. You only love what you protect. It's just that for me. And I feel like the more and more we forget how amazing nature is, the less we love it, and then we'll just keep enacting policies which are not going to be for us because nature is us. We're part of nature. And we're just going to have something, we'll just not care enough. That said, it's then also the same children who keep filling me with hope, where I'm just like, yes, you're out there protesting, we should be doing that, but you are out there, so good for you. You know, so they're the ones who are raising their voices. But I'd really wish that they didn't have to, and instead they could just clamber the grass, like around the grass like these children out there.
I'm taking off on what Radha said, which is, I too am very envious of a lot of the kids growing up today, but not because of the nature they get, but because of the books they get about nature, because there are some gorgeous books out there, so including everybody here. But what's your favorite nature book?
Of the current lot? Okay. So, you know, it's a very hard question. This is like,
you can't
what's your
give
favorite
my favorites,
song?
Huh? You can't give my favorite.
Yeah. So, you know, it's really hard. I'm blanking out. Off the top of my head, I think one of the nature books I've thoroughly enjoyed reading is Peter Matthieson's Snow Leopard.
I love that book.
It's just that's like poetry, but in prose. I think really it's just right at the top, I think, for me. Yeah.
If I have to think of the top, Kenneth Anderson's, because the landscape descriptions were just amazing. And now when you go back and read, you know that a lot of the leopards and all were right here, Jalahalli and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, like you can drive down Hosu Road and be like, right, hang on, Kenneth Anderson was killing a leopard here.
Please do a history walk with all of this. It's a long list, but Radha knows which one I didn't let her tell. But Robert Macfarlane and Jackie Morris's Lost Words, which conjures back nature into our lives. And Ranjit Lal, whose editor is sitting right there, Sudeshna. Tigers of Taboo Valley. I think Ranjit and Zai Whittaker write nature so beautifully that...
Also his Crow Chronicles, which is
I
amazing.
Crow Chronicles, yes. So anything he writes about nature, I absolutely love.
How about your own books? Which of your own nature books do you like?
So
I have favorites, but I'm not going to say it. So.
Okay. Of the lot that I have written, I think Bijal knows this, she was the editor on the book, but I'm very partial to this book I wrote about hermit crabs. It's called So it's called A Suitable Shell, and it's about hermit crabs don't have, they're soft shell creatures, so they need shells, right? So I've written about a crab that goes looking for a shell because it's lost it and all it's finding is trash on the beach. So I'm in love with crabs, especially hermit crabs, but also the fact that we only see trash on all beaches. As pristine as they call it, like, oh, this is the cleanest beach. No, there is no such thing anymore. So it's really heartbreaking to see how much trash is there. So I kind of brought in one heartbreaking element and one favorite thing to write, and it's really close to my heart because of that.
I haven't written so many books, just 2. And you don't choose between 2 children, so I'll say that I like both of them for very different reasons. The Cities and Canopies, the book on trees, because it is the first book, it's your first child, it's always special. And we had a lot of fun writing it. And the second was on leaves. And that was for little kids, and I didn't realize how much I would enjoy writing it. Thanks to Bijal and Pratham for having given us the opportunity. Never thought I would fall in love all over again with leaves. So that's also a very, very special book.
I don't know. But I guess, I must admit, A Cloud Called Bhura is perhaps one of the books that's closest to me because it was the first time I tried my hand at fiction. I've always been a journalist and I've always written articles and features, and as a child I've always loved books, and I said this before also, authors are magical beings. And the fact that I got to write something that was not, it was set in fact in many ways, but it was my first fictional attempt, so I'll always be close to that book. It's about this brown cloud that comes and hovers on top of Bombay, and then these children come to the rescue. So that's, I guess, would be the one. What about you, Shalini?
Probably my first book, which is called Vanamala and the Cephalopod, mostly because it has my favorite, like Radha, right? It has all my favorite animals in it. It has octopuses and jellyfish and all my favorite underwater animals. So that's really it, right? I just put in all the animals I liked. I wanted to ask you guys, because you've all written for adults and children, and I think one of my favorite things about your children's books is that sense of wonder you guys give those books. So how do you do that? If you're writing for a child, how do you sort of set out to pitch it for a child?
So I leave it to my editor. So she always tells, yeah. So I ramble many pages, and then I ask Bijal, what is the most amazing fact for you here? And she just rolls her eyes and says, no, this page length is not working for me. But yeah, jokes apart, yeah, I do need more words than little to write about that. The thing is, I'm always in constant amazement, in a state of, that is my constant state when I come to learn of things. I always see something new, and I'm a total geek when it comes to these things. I'm always on Wikipedia, I'm always on every site possible trying to find out more about the thing I saw. So I think that kind of comes through in my writing, because I'm also then secretly expecting the other person also to be totally amazed that, I don't want to, I should watch what I'm saying. So, let's say there is a caterpillar that's behaving like a snake just to ward off. There are many caterpillars like that. So if I see that, I'm just like, why are you not amazed by it? Wait, if you're not amazed enough, I'm going to write it again so that you are amazed by it. So I think it's just that, it just passes on, I think.
I guess just to share the wonder that I had experienced when I was young, and I just want to see how I can put that into words and share it with the younger kids. But also the fact that nature is absolutely amazing, and you really don't. There is a certain sense. I feel that I have a certain biophilia for any plant, any insect. It's without any, it can be a snake, it can be a lizard, a gecko. So I don't know where I got it, and when I see people who say I don't like so and so, I don't like a snake, I'm like, why? What is this thing that you don't like about this creature that is so wondrous? And so that comes in a bit. I found it very difficult actually to write for very young kids. That was the biggest challenge, because mostly it's easier to write for adults, but it's very difficult to write for. Yeah, but it wasn't easy. It took a long time. So I think the wonder that I had that I had been able to witness as a child, and the fact that I should share it with other kids, if they can at least ignite some love for nature.
Well, I guess one is that I have a very simple theory when writing for children. You know, do you remember when you were a child and then there would be these annoying uncle and aunties who would come and be like, "Arey beta, kaise ho? Let me pull your cheeks," and you're just like, "No, do not do that." And as opposed to that one aunt or somebody who'd sit down with you and say, "How was your school day?" So that talking down feeling of like, I'm going to stand up and tell you everything about this world and how awesome it is often becomes didactic for me. So I'm always like, just let's sit with the child and have a conversation, which I think both Radha and Seema do very well. And the second is just, it's what Seema said really. I think nature is the true magic that we have. I tried to write about it in Savi and the Memory Keeper. I'm trying to write about it for a new book. It's just that, you know, what is bioluminescence? It's just like, just the phenomenon. I'm sure when someone saw it for the first time, you're like, it's magic. Elves' cups, I mean, I'm sorry, those are mushrooms meant for elves to drink from. That is what it is. And all of these, or just the simple act of a caterpillar turning into a butterfly is magical. And I think the moment you talk about this magic, and children are under a spell then.
I also wanted to ask Bijal particularly, right, because I'm thinking of the cloud called Bhura, and I mean, there's the sense of magic, but that particular book is also giving kids a sort of sense of agency. So I was hoping you'd talk about that a bit.
So, you know, as a child, I think everyone who's heard me now knows that I was a very introverted child. And I always wanted to do things. I wanted to go on adventures. I wanted to try out for a role in the school drama. But I was so painfully shy and scared of everything that I just could not do it. And I mean, when I became a teenager, I just had this stage where I was out doing street plays. I was doing puppet shows about pollution, street plays about animal welfare. And it suddenly gave me a sense of purpose. And when I write my characters, I realize a lot of them don't start with agency. They always have purpose, because children always want social justice and change. They have a very strong sense of fairness and unfairness. And so that's why I end up giving them a lot more agency, maybe because I didn't feel like I had it. And children today have a lot more space, often also problematic in many ways. We've all discussed this endlessly over the 2 days. But they have that space, and I think when they see these characters in fiction, I think it gives you hope at some level that I might be a very shy child, but maybe I can say one little thing and it would matter. So I just want my characters to make children seen.
Thanks. I wanted to slightly shift topic here, and I wanted to talk a little bit about access, right? Because since we're talking about climate and we're talking about justice, I wanted to talk a little bit about who gets to read our books. Bijal, I know you work on this a lot, so, but I think this is true for everyone on the panels.
I always wonder who reads my books. And sometimes after I finish writing, I'll be like, I hope nobody reads this, because what if they hate it? So it's a constant swing, you know, from one extreme to the other. And then I wonder, oh, this paragraph turned out well. I hope people read this paragraph at least and not the rest of it. So it's just really too weird. But this is a constant question, you know. I keep wondering who reads these books. But I really hope that it's reaching a wider audience than we think, because we really are in a bubble, you know. The people who we interact with, many times it's the same people who are buying and reading our books, and it rarely goes beyond, especially when you come to a more niche, you know, topic around wildlife conservation and things like that. There really are a handful of people interested in it, and they really are the ones who are everywhere doing the same things.
And I mean, also the fact that we're all writing in English.
Yes, yeah, that part. I mean, to a large extent, I'm thankful for Pratham Books for taking care of that part, because I think there is a wider reach in terms of because of the translations. But yeah, for example, the Duckbill book we wrote about the climate heroes, I really want such a wide audience to find out about these people, but I know it's limited because it's in English, and I am limited by the fact that I can only write in English, and I can speak other languages, but I really cannot write in those languages. So I'm just hoping that somebody will be able to read and find a way to, but again, it's just hope. So it's an open question, I really don't know.
Yeah, so whatever writing, translations and is a huge, we would love to have our books in multiple languages, but it is a roadblock. We know we are reaching a very, very minimal number, but I really don't know what is the solution for it. But one thing, at least Karnataka has done through the Panchayat Raj and Rural Development Department is have libraries in every village. And nice, well-stocked libraries. So that's a great start where, at least having, I know in Kerala where I am from, it's called the Vayanashala movement, which is having a library in a village, really did wonders for the literacy movement and everything. So at least having whatever books, children's books in English, something for them to get interested in, libraries, and then yes, translation is a huge uphill task. Wish we could do more translations of everything that was written, especially for children.
So my day job is at Pratham Books, and all of you have written for Pratham Books and many people in the audience. And I think for us, it's just like what Seema said, one is to get these books out in many more languages, because really mother tongue language is one of the best ways to get children to read. But I think we've got to start investing into a library system for this country, because like what Karnataka has done, it's really, really revolutionary, and it shouldn't be, but it is. And we talk a lot about decolonizing reading and education system. I think we need to de-Brahmanize the reading system also. We need to make it more accessible to many more communities. And the more communities you meet, you realize they want to read. It's just that they don't always have access or the means to get these books. And that really has to change. It's something that all of us need to become agents of change in that sense. I know it's a lot. We have to write our books, market them, and then become agents of change, but have to do it.
I mean, sort of follow-up question, which is, can I ask how one would become an agent of change? I mean, if you're a kid today and you're going, I want to become an agent of change, what would one do?
One is, I think, ask questions. Don't be scared to ask questions. Adults may not always have the answers, it's true, especially with climate change, no one has the answers. But you've got to ask those questions, don't be scared to. Also demand change, because here's the thing, the problem's not been created by this generation of children, so it's created by all of us. So you've got to also demand change. And I think the other is that, and I know I think grow up and vote better, because when you do that, I believe that things will change. So read a lot more, watch things, but just to become an agent of change, I'm going to say this again, go out and hug a tree, climb a tree, and I'm pretty sure that child will become an agent of change.
Yeah, I mean, the sensory experience with nature is something that is very critical to become an agent for change. But I would like to also mention Greta Thunberg right now, because just as every one of us was hitting a rock bottom with optimism, here was this child who just came along and did what she thought was the best thing she could do, and see where it went. So there is, every child around us is like that, but maybe they're not as persistent. So it's good to have such role models to remind children about it. But for me, the first and foremost thing is, yeah, hug a tree, touch that leaf, play with that bug or insect, because it's only then that when you touch and feel and smell, that you have that connection with nature.
Yeah, totally agree with what Bijal and Seema said about nature being such a sensory experience, and you have to be out there. So, no, I don't know anyone who, I shouldn't say anyone, but I know very few people who've actually touched soil, played with an earthworm. All those things are things you only do as kids, but not as yeah, even as young adults, you don't really do them. But there's really that specific age group where you start doing these things, and then nature becomes familiar. But what we see more often is a fear that it's the other, and there is, I don't know what's out there. There's like a clump of trees. I don't think I should go in there, but there's a concrete road. This might be safer for me than that. But that distance we feel, actually that comes from this distance we maintain or start as kids. So I think it's very, very important for them to, feel and touch and play and be among trees and all of that. The first instance when, the very first reaction to seeing an insect or something should not be to swat it or cry or scream and run away, but some amount of curiosity of. So I think I really would like to tell parents, if a child is exhibiting that, please don't discourage them. Don't transfer your fears of any creature, of any flying insect or anything to the child, because let them be naturally curious, and I think they will turn out all right if they're left, left alone with their curiosity. I think they'll turn around all right. But yeah, that's very crucial. But I think another thing, slightly on a different tangent, I think when it comes to agents of change, the messaging around issues, around like what Bijal said about climate change, right? They're too large. You're showing an iceberg and a polar bear, and you're telling a kid somewhere in, Pelandur saying, save the earth, save the climate. It's not going to work. They don't know what that looks like. Messaging has to be specific, and messaging has to be actionable. If you tell that child, make sure that for the next week, you are in charge of sorting out garbage in the house. That's an actionable item that a child can work on and take back, right? And then you say, tell 3 other kids, tell your friends, tell your neighbors that this is your duty today. But again and again, if they're saying photos of a giant panda and saying it's going extinct because forests are being cut in China, I mean, I can't influence the 2 other people I live at home with, right? I mean, what are we telling people? Saying, look at the iceberg, look at the panda. It's not going to work. I think it needs to be relevant and specific. I mean, even within India, if we say elephants are dying because roads and railways are cutting across their paths, it's very hard for me to make sense of that, because what is the scale of these roads? What is the scale of an elephant's herd? No one knows these things. I really think messaging has to be more specific and more direct and more relevant also.
I must admit, I can fully see a meme of like laundry not drying in Bangalore and messaging that around climate change, and that might work.
Totally, that will work.
You're saying memes are the way to go.
They work, don't they?
I believe your students at APU use that a lot.
I'm sorry to say yes.
More than necessary.
I think we'll pause here and throw it open for questions, if anybody in the audience has anything to ask.
Hi, I was just, hearing it out, and I so resonate that thought that, children are not, they need to have that sensory experience when we talk about nature and all of that. Having said that, I'm a mother. I have grown up, how, Seema rightly said, climbing trees, running around trees, and, being there out for 3 to 4 hours. My children are not getting that exposure at all. So when we talk to them about something like climate change and all of that, a lot of the times, they're not able to connect with it. Yeah? So, I mean, what can we do as parents, as educators? One, of course, nature walks, nature journals, which, Neve as a school so strongly believes in. Other than that, what do you think can be done about it to get children close to nature, today's generation?
I think if you're doing that, that's great. Not many parents do that, because the first thing to do is put iPad and say, here, watch National Geographic or Planet or whatever, Animal Planet. But taking them out, making that effort to take them out on a walk, it need not be far. It can be to Lal Bagh, it can be to Kaban Park, and maybe investing in a binoculars, getting up early, going and watching birds. It's not so much about getting the species right, I would say, as it is about just that experience of observation. If the child thinks that you feel it is important, they will definitely pick it up. So, yeah, we were lucky to have the kind of environment to grow in. Children may not have that here in a city like Bangalore, but I think many kids I know, parents, have taken them to Lal Bagh or Kapan Bagh and they've had a blast. So it's just that idea, my excitement, how does it transfer to the child? So if you're doing it, keep doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, as writers who write a lot about nature, are there some things that are off limits? Like, I know Bijal hates zoos, so she doesn't like to talk about like certain aspects of it. So are there certain things that you would not put in your books?
So Deshna already knows what I don't like. So the question was what we would avoid putting into writing. I think I do write a lot about dark subjects, and you published some of them. I do think that I would never ever end on a complete dismal note. I think for me that just doesn't work when especially I'm writing for children and young adults, because I think telling them the truth is very important. Strip it bare, lay it out there, tell them the facts, and they all are shocked, they're horrified, and yet they're resilient also. But I think that it has to end on hope, because without that, I think as a writer, I would not have done what I set out to do. So hope for me is also, leaving it as the dismal space is something that I wouldn't do. I don't glorify captivity in my writing, and more I'm learning that to use certain kind of ableist language, or language that trivializes a certain species because of the metaphors that we've used in the past. Those are things that I definitely do avoid.
Yeah, things like, you never say lone wolf or cunning fox, and, lone wolf as in reference to the lone wolf we keep seeing in news, right? Or say cunning fox or things like that, or refer to a donkey as lazy or a bird brain, and, all of that stuff. I think they are just in bad taste. And of course, there was less awareness about this earlier, but there is more awareness. I think these are things we do consciously avoid putting into writing.
When we are writing about the environment, especially the first book, that the Cities in Canopies, when we wrote, there are a lot of debates around trees and a lot of environment which is very polarizing. But we wanted to address it without taking sides, because both are equally important. We can't come across as saying that this is our bias and this is only what we present. So for example, the chapter on native and exotic trees, there's a huge fight among people, you can have only native trees, only exotic trees. We were somewhere in the middle. So we do address such topics, but we go with facts, we go with the data. And then there may be some of our bias that may creep into it, but it won't come out as preachy, but it will be purely based on data. For example, eucalyptus is a bad tree, cut it off. But we really don't know. The science is not there. So for us, we try to base it on science. Of course, when it comes to issues like caste, using certain words, definitely not. For example, we will not call the black kite the pariah kite, which was the caste-based name for the Brahmani kite was the Brahmani kite, and the pariah kite was the black kite. We will not use black kite in our book because we know that that's the wrong way of. So that kind of things, yes, we do. So it's a very difficult question to answer. We don't want to not write about it, because then we would only be preaching to the choir.
So Ms. Radha Rangarajan, you mentioned that if a child is left to explore, just let their curiosity take over and the parents should just let them do whatever they want. I completely agree with that. But I just wanted to ask you and any of the other panel members, do you think there should be some sort of a restriction put? Because a child's curiosity may not know any limits, so should we make sure that they restrict it to some extent, maintain a balance? Or do you think that that limit is already, they know that limit, or that there is actually no limit in itself?
Yeah. So, of course, I did not mean send a child out into a rainforest by itself. No, I didn't mean that. But yeah, which happens, by the way. I mean, what do you think children who grow up in rainforests are doing? They're playing in rainforests. But I meant within the limits of how much we can explore. Like, for example, I, of course, meant it in reference to a lot of people being really petrified of just anything being wild, right? Including a moth that flies into the house that creates complete panic, and everyone's like, swat that creature because it has flown into our house. And it's so with such people, which happens often in urban environments, I think my message was more for them that, do not transfer fears and just let them be. If they want to play with an earthworm, if they want to dig up soil, it's totally fine. Nothing wrong will happen to them. With that being said, I think, if they should be guided to not, if they spot a snake or something, always maintain distance and not try to touch and feel animals as much as possible. Yeah.
So would the
That's
same apply
what
to
I meant.
books? Sorry, what I meant was, would the same apply to books? I forgot to mention that. Would the same apply to books in specific?
Oh.
So actually, when we've got this book with Rohan Chakravarti, he's a wildlife cartoonist, and it's called Making Friends, but from a distance. And it basically talks about a bunch of children who are playing cricket, and then they see a snake, and the first reaction is to kill it. And then the snakes have a conversation with them, and then also say that if here's how you identify venomous snakes and stay away from them, and all of that. And at this point, we're actually working on a book with Rajiv Ipe. And it's about a child exploring the world, just how Radha said. And he just sent me a message and said, listen, I've been thinking about this book, that this child's unfettered going around. What I would like to do is perhaps show a page of him seeing a snake, saying hello, but from a distance, because he wants to make sure that the children who are reading it also are able to find safe space, like understand that some creatures are meant to be left alone. So books in that sense definitely have that heavy mantle of responsibility. So yeah, that's why they get dog-eared so quickly, because so much responsibility on them.
All right, then thank you everyone for being here, and thank you guys very much
Thank
for
you,
talking about
Shalini.
books.
Thank you, Shalini. Thank you.